Truth Frequency Radio is your number one. Wherever you are, make it Truth Frequency Radio.
And the Lord showed me a very great country outside of this world. And the dwellers in that place were clad in the raiment of shining angels. And their raiment was like unto their country. And angels hovered about them there. And the glory of the dwellers there was equal. And with one voice they sang praises alternately to the Lord God, rejoicing in that place. The Lord saith to us, this is the place of your high priests, the righteous men. The Apocalypse of Peter. Welcome back, everybody, for a second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed, and I have as guests with me this evening, Rob Skiba. We are continuing our journey into the creation narrative. We're speaking about the sixth day, and specifically the mention of the preadamites in Genesis 1:26 through 28, and then modern Adam and Eve in Genesis 2:4 and onward. And I think that where it says, that the preadamites made male and female, created he them, and in the likeness of God, I believe that the hominids here on the earth, that they are the closest with regard to being made in the image of God, and that this is what it's in reference to. Of course, we know that Adam was different. He was, I believe, he was created in a spiritual and more like the angels, in bright-natured and not yet mortal and not under the authority of death, and that did not happen until the temptation. But that the hominids, pre-Adamites, they also, here on the earth, they are the highest representation of, creature, and being closer to the image of God. And that may be what it is in reference to, in speaking about, them being made in the likeness of the Creator. But, who really knows? Rob, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, all we can do is look at the available evidence, like we talked about before. Both of us try to approach any topic that we're coming to, sort of like a forensic investigator, a detective.
Yes.
Coming upon, let's say, a crime scene. You're going to look at everything.
Right.
Every piece in that room is a potential piece of evidence to help figure out whatever took place there. So, that's the way I look at it. It's like, okay, I believe you're the same way. We're going to start with Scripture, see what we can get out of it, and then take a look and see what else is out there, Yeah. And, for me, the way I operate is like, okay, if it agrees with Scripture, fantastic. If it disagrees, I'm throwing it out.
Right.
If there's a situation where maybe it's a little ambiguous and you're looking and you're like, well, okay, maybe this added information, it doesn't contradict it. Maybe it adds to the understanding of it.
Or clarifies.
And this could be one of those situations. Look, we've talked about it before. It is the mark of an intelligent mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Mm-hmm. So I like to consider myself reasonably intelligent, and I like to entertain thoughts and look at the available evidence and, make my decision accordingly. So, like I said earlier, you've been at this a lot longer than I have. This is all brand new for me. I'm still struggling with it, to be honest. But it is interesting. I mean, I am looking at this text now as if the picture just flipped on me,
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
the text, they talk about blue people, red people, we say red and yellow, black and white, they're precious in his sight, right? We sing the song, but I've read in other texts, about blue people and, different stuff. Would you say any of that plays into your view on this, or do you even know what I'm talking about?
I don't, but with regard to blue people, certainly that seems to fall in line with the demigods over there in far India. They had blue people, and they were said to be the demigods, the hybrid, those born of the copulation of the, what we say the sons of God with the daughters of humanity, that they portray a lot of their hybrid demigods, those that were worshipped, such as like Krishna, as being blue. And so, not understanding what you're talking about, but I would maybe link it to that, if that's, in any way connected to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and see what text that I was drawing that from. It's been a long time. It just popped in my head. Actually, there's a text that I consider probably one of the most dangerous texts that exist on Earth, and that is the Urantia book. If you're familiar, are you familiar with Urantia?
Yeah, I have not spent a lot of time reading it.
Probably,
but I'm aware of what you're talking about.
Yeah, it does talk about that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I am certainly not going to base any of my beliefs on the Urantia book.
Right, that's channeled material. And
yeah, truly. I mean, it comes right out, pretty much tells you that right at the beginning of it, and it's like 2,000 pages of like very deep. That's why I consider it probably the most dangerous book on Earth, because it is extremely detailed and it attempts to correct the Bible.
Right.
It's like, the Bible sort of got it right, but here's the real deal. And of course it speaks about everything as, ever expanding universe, and Urantia,
yes, of course,
the angelic name for the Earth, and in the Orvanton galaxy or whatever. I mean, it's, and the New Agers love it. And when I went to the Contact in the Desert UFO conference, like that was a big push there. Like they had booths with the Urantia book and stuff.
Oh, really?
And that book showed up in Chicago, which is turning out to be a very interesting city. The more I look into things, things that take place there. But like, I think it was like 1951 or 52, the book just showed up, and no human has ever claimed authorship of it. It itself claims to be authored by angelic beings. So yeah, I would say fallen angels, and it's very
yes.
The information is very dangerous, but it wasn't the only place. I can't think of where else I had seen that other, colored races and stuff like that, blue being one of them. And it does make you wonder, like the Hindus. I spent time in India when I was a missionary, and they do have lots of stuff where they had blue people. And some people say that it could have been an overdose of silver, which can actually turn your skin kind of permanently bluish. It may be. It could be, or there could be something else going on there. I don't know. Did you see the post that I did a couple of days ago? Let me see if I can find it on my Facebook page about the dog-headed people.
But I know what you're talking about, and I have, because that's also mentioned in some of the ancient manuscripts, as far as dog-headed people. I don't remember exactly which ones, but I do remember coming across that and looking up an article. I forget what they were called, but yeah, there was supposedly a whole race of these dog-headed people, and again, living in India, which we see also in the ancient Egypt, these kind of hybrid type of people that are
like Anubis.
Yeah, that are part animal and part human. And even Berosus makes mention of that in the history of the type of hybrids that were created before the flood in the antediluvian age, that centaurs and Dogon, the fish god, and things of that nature.
Yeah, I just posted it, and it's for people who are watching this on YouTube. The video that I posted is from a YouTube channel called Voices of the Past is the name of the channel. And the title of the video is "Do the Dog-Headed Men Have Souls?" Letter from a 9th century monk. The primary source talking about the Cenocephaly,
Yes.
dog-headed men. It's bizarre, man. This was like 800 AD, I think, was the date on it, and really bizarre. But to your point, yeah, I mean, the Book of Joshua and Jubilees both tell you that in the latter days of Methuselah, the last 120 years, which I believe is the Genesis 6:3 reference, where it says, man's days should be 120 years for his flesh. Well, I mean, he's flesh since the beginning, right? So, or, he changed, after he ate the fruit, whatever. But I mean, since, Genesis 1:2, chapter 2 or whatever, he's been flesh. So, so what's going on in Genesis 6:3 is told to you in great amount of detail in Joshua 4:18 and Jubilees 7:24, that after the act of the angels mating with women, which was 3,550 years before the flood, that was in the days of Jared. Okay. So, and Enoch said the first generation would only live for 500 years. First generation Nephilim offspring would only live 500 years. They'd kill each other off. Well, you still got 700 more years to go to the flood. So, and Noah lived 600 of those years, 600 of the 700 years before the flood. But in the last 120 years, men began to blend species. And you have like multiple cultures all over the world having depictions of animal-human hybrids. Right. And it is my contention that was the variety of Nephilim that made it through on the ark, incidentally, in my opinion. And that, it's how they returned after the flood, because we have animal-human hybrids after the flood. And apparently even up until at least 800 AD, there were various people writing about dog-headed people and other, monsters and things of that nature. So weird stuff going on. I know we're jumping the gun here and getting way ahead and off the topic, but that's kind of the way these things work. Something else I wanted to mention, though, going back to Genesis 1, is Genesis 1:28. King James says replenish the earth, and that of course makes you think, well, replenish, that must be plenishing from again,
right.
Something that had happened before. However, when I look up that same Hebrew word, that's in, Genesis 1:28. So I'm on BibleHub.com right now using their feature to check out Genesis 1:28. In the Hebrew, the word says be fruitful, multiply, and King James says replenish, but the Hebrew word is maule.
Yes.
That's how I pronounce it, but it just means to fill.
Mm-hmm.
So King Jimmy gives us the idea of refilling, whereas the Hebrew seems to just say, "Hey, go out there and fill the earth."
Mm-hmm.
But that said,
right.
I do tend to lean very heavily nowadays in the direction we talked about at the beginning of our series here about the so-called gap theory. That there was I don't have any problem. I say that again. If we believe we're going to get a reset at the millennial reign or after the millennial reign, new heaven, new earth, if we're going to get a reset and we think eternity, well, that goes both ways. Most of us, because we have a beginning, we just think eternity future, but there's an eternity past too. And if we believe, and I know you do as well, that this current world that we're in is 6,000-ish years old, what was God doing for eternity past? I have no problem believing the scripture says we're going to get a reset, so I have no problem believing we could be in a reset, which means there could have been something before that got destroyed. But I don't know that Genesis 1:28 is a good argument in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even in the Hebrew there, it does in the very last line of the Strong's definition, it says replenish as part of the definition too. So maybe in some way it was mentioning that, but again, we don't know. But with regard to having studied and read and looked into a lot of the extra biblical materials, that it certainly seems to insinuate that the war in heaven is what led to the destruction and then the reformation, the recreation. Because even looking at the Hebrew words there, again, for Haya, Tohu Wabohu, which is the earth, was without form and void, that it says it became or becomes a deserted wasteland and an indistinguishable ruin. And of course, that word ruin also has implications connected to it that something occurred which led to it being destroyed. And so, yeah, I do feel that that's what is being revealed, and that, the connections of what we're talking about, the last 6,000 years of the Second World Age, that this is what we see. And Peter makes mention of how this world age will be destroyed by fire at the end of this particular age. And so that's my belief on it, and my study on that. I reveal in, the books on paradise and the firmament vaulted dome of the earth, and the great contest 1, war in heaven. The first 3 or 4 chapters of each one of those books goes into greater detail on Atlantis, and we shared all of that when we did that particular account. And so if people want to know more about what we're referencing here, please do check out the discussion that we had on Genesis 1 the first day, because we went into great detail on all of this in that particular account.
Yeah, as well go ahead and just get real controversial here. Get your feeling on it. But Genesis 1:24, where it talks about, just look, I got the Bible Hub up with the parallel Bible, so you can look at all the various translations. King James, and God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, the beasts of the earth after his kind, and it was so. And if you look in the Hebrew on that, it says that he made the living creature nephesh. And this being the same word that says when God breathed to Adam's nostrils, he became a living, King James, soul, Hebrew nephesh. And so, the question I've heard a lot, do animals go to heaven? I think right now a better question would be, do people go to heaven? Because even that has changed in my thinking in recent years, is that it seems to me everything comes here. We even got, Yeshua saying no one's been to heaven except the Son, right? Only him, stuff like that. So then there's the whole question of soul sleep, or, what happens when you die, and, all of that. But it appears to me that if we even do go to heaven, it's a pit stop on the way back here. Because, heaven comes down,
yes,
to earth. And so,
right.
So people ask me, do animals go to heaven? I'm like, well, let's go back and do people go to heaven first? Regardless, we got the nephesh going on with both. So I'm of the opinion that the animals are, I'm an artist. This is just my opinion. Okay. I'm an artist. And when I take the time to create something, I'm proud of it. I love it. I put effort into it. I made it. It's something I'm proud of. It's something I love. And it's something I desire to keep, unless I'm, contracted to sell it or whatever, And if I'm in the image and likeness of God, I have to believe that he really enjoys his creation too. That he calls it very good. He's very proud of it.
Yes.
He loves his creation. In fact, when I was out on Day of Atonement, walking out, I went out to the woods and just walking around out there, and I was just grieved in my spirit at what we have done to this amazing earth. And destroying, I'm seeing various forms of life out there, nature, it's a nature preserve. So there's still stuff out there. And, I'm like, if Earth is just left alone, it's meant to thrive, it's meant to produce life, and to, right. Everything works synergistically together, the various life forms. I mean, it's like what we are doing with chemtrails and all this stuff. I mean, like, we got to pay attention. Like, we lose the bees. The bee population's like dying, folks. Right. We lose the bees, we're done. I mean, it's game over. And I was just grieved in my spirit, because like every living creature, even those bugs and stuff that we're scared of, and snakes and whatever, we look at things and we think, well, that's ugly or that's scary or whatever, but it has a purpose, it has a function, yes. and it's beautiful in its own way. Yes. And God created it that way, and so I believe that all of it's important to him. He says have dominion, but he didn't say go screw everything up.
Right.
He is entrusting this beautiful creation to part of his creation, humans.
Right.
Like, here, I made all this for you. Please take care of it. And we've done a horrible job of that. And so I'm of the opinion that all animal life, just like human life, is important, and that God cares for them. So, and whenever when we have a peek into heaven, we're seeing animals there.
Mm-hmm.
You got Peter's vision.
Right.
Animals coming down on a sheet. You got Yeshua's coming back on a horse. Yeshua's coming back on a horse. Okay, let that sink in. Even the descriptions of the some of the angelic beings, like the cherubim, that have they're effectively animal human hybrids. These are God's created. Which it was actually my wife's insight. She said, because the question comes up, why would men blend species in the first place? Like what possessed man, in the last 120 years of Methuselah's life leading up to the flood, to say, hey, let's blend ourselves with a goat.
Right.
Genetically. I mean, you can't copulate with these things and create offspring, so it had to be genetic manipulation. They had to do it. And Sheila said, well, what if the angels were trying to get man to create beings in their image?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, so that's an interesting thought, because you do have biblical descriptions of creatures that God created, that Yahuwah created, like the cherubim, the eye of not the eye, but I mean the face of a man, of a lion, of an ox, an eagle, all in one creature. That's an animal human hybrid. That maybe there were a class of beings, and it's interesting if you think about the cherubim that the scriptures talk about as good cherubim, man, eagle, ox, lion. What's missing? Well, you're missing the fish, you're missing the lizards, you're missing the insects. Oh, coincidentally, these are all the things that they talk about in alien abduction scenarios, that we have the reptilians and the insectoids, and the Dogon fish god kind of thing. So if Satan, Lucifer, was of the class of angel that we call cherubim, the anointed cherub, that covered, then could it be that he was of a class of cherub that represented those hybrids?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does say in some of the other texts as well that that he was able to wear the face of and to present himself, and that he was over an order, the seraphim, which we know that Sarah means snake or serpent like, and so the seraphim angels are the ones that we see, in my opinion, represented as the feathered serpent, and that are reptilian, dragon-like in nature, and that these particular beings represent what we see in even the antediluvian age as the worship of the feathered serpent all over the world during these prior times. And so, but with regard to what you had made mention of, and I do absolutely believe
the nefesh,
as far as the nefesh, that God being within us, and that we are all, everything from the macro to the micro, created in the image of God, that his spirit is what animates and brings forth life, even on those very small levels with, the insects and amoebas and single cell and all of that, that it is still beautiful and complex in its own way, and that everything again has part to play in the harmony of the natural order. And in the Book of Jubilees, in chapter 2, it speaks about all of the souls of all the living creatures and all of the angels and even all of the elements as having been created on the first day. It says in chapter 2, for on the first day he created the heavens which are above, and the earth and the waters, and all the spirits which serve before him, the angels of the presence, the angels of sanctification, the angels of the spirit of fire, and the angels of the spirit of the winds, the angels of the spirit of the clouds, darkness, snow, hail, and hoarfrost, and the angels of voices, thunder, lightning, the angels of the spirits of cold and heat, winter, spring, autumn, summer, the spirits of his creatures which are in the heavens and on the earth. He created the abysses and the darkness, eventide, night, light, dawn, and day, which he hath prepared in the knowledge of his heart. And so I do absolutely believe that we see in the earlier part of Jubilees where Adam is speaking to the animals, and they are all speaking Hebrew as the Edenic language, and that the animals are in heaven as they were here on the earth. That the mortal animals, those which die, just like humanity, that everything here on the earth, that this is a place where spirit and matter come together in duality, and that everything here being under the authority of death, that everything ages and dies. And so in this world, our spirits, our nefesh, are married to our physical being for what is single lifetime. And I do believe that this is with all the creatures, the insects, the animals, that everything has spirit, consciousness, soul, nefesh imbued within it, even though we see it on a physical level. And then, death is part of the process here in this world.
Yeah, that's interesting. What text was it that was saying that the animals were speaking in Hebrew?
Jubilees.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's always intrigued me that animals, many of them can be trained and they can understand the various languages of men. It's not just English, right? You train a dog in English, but people who live in China can also train their dog in Chinese, that various animals can understand.
Yes. All right, we'll be right back for final segment, everyone.